Thanks, Gloria, and I'm Randy Hansen. In today's World News headlines, Kerry upholds threat of military strike on Syria should diplomacy fail. And Assad says U.S. must end threats before Syria surrenders chemical weapons. UN report says Syrian government attacks hospitals and blocking treatment. And Syria researcher cited by Kerry McCain fired for lying about credentials. And in Afghanistan, Taliban attacks U.S. consulate in Herat. And out of Egypt, military-backed government extends state of emergency for 2 months. And Al Jazeera takes legal actions against Egypt for media crackdown. And out of India, 4 sentenced to death for fatal gang rape that ignited protest. And out of Turkey, mass protests erupt after death of demonstrator, and more than 100 women arrested in civil disobedience for immigration reform. In California, set to raise minimum wage to $10 an hour by 2016. And California lawmakers passed Domestic Workers' Bill of Rights. And D.C. mayor vetoes living wage bill after pressure from Walmart and other retailers. And Colorado hit by deadly floods. Special prosecutor to probe police killing of 107-year-old man in Arkansas. And a Florida AG, Pam Bondi, delays prisoner's execution to attend campaign event. And out of Washington, officials test alfalfa crop for GMO contamination. And in Canada, oil carried by derailed train was mislabeled. And a release from Cuban 5 demanded on 15th anniversary of arrest. And a philosopher-writer Marshall Berman, author of All That Is Solid Melts into Air, dies at 72. And education scholar Jean Onion dies. GVTV News is broadcast in Grass Valley Television, division of Rural Counties Television Network, whose focus is on community involvement. We also air on NCTV for a while. But before these stories, GVTV News would like to thank one of our underwriters who supports your only visual video news media in Nevada County. That's right, it's us, GVTV News. In today's first world news story, Secretary of State John Kerry is meeting with Russia's counterpart Sergei Lavrov for a second day in Geneva to discuss a potential deal for Syria to turn over its chemical weapons and avoid U.S. strikes. Kerry is also meeting with Lakhdar Brahimi, the United Nations Arab League envoy for Syria. Kerry called for initial talks with Lavrov's constructive and said the two plan to meet in New York later in the month to bid to revive plans of an international peace conference on Syria in Geneva. But speaking before talks Thursday, Kerry upheld the prospect of military strikes against Syria and said President Obama has made it clear that should diplomacy fail, forces might be necessary to deter and degrade Assad's capacity to deliver these weapons. It won't get rid of them, but it could change his willingness to use them. United Nations confirmed Thursday it had received documents from Syria to join International Convention Against Chemical Weapons. In a Russian television interview, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad said he would only surrender his chemical arms if the United States ends the threat of strikes. He said, "When we see that the U.S. really wants stability in our region and will stop threatening and aiming to attack and stop supplying weapons to terrorists, then we will consider the process can be brought to a final stage, and it will become real and acceptable to Syria." He should have added, "and Russia." A new report by Human Rights Watch says Syrian government and pro-government forces killed roughly 250 people during one of its conflict's worst mass executions in the town of Al-Bayad, Beda, and Benignus in May. Another report in United Nations investigators says Syrian government forces are systematically attacking hospitals and denying treatment to sick people from areas linked to the opposition. United Nations has previously accused both sides in the Syrian conflict of war crimes. A Syria researcher whose work was cited by Secretary of State John Kerry and Arizona Republican Senator John McCain to help bolster support for military strikes in Syria, has been fired after lying to her employer about having a doctoral degree. Elizabeth O'Baggy worked for the Institute of the Study of War. She wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal and was cited by Kerry in testimony before the House Foreign Affairs Committee last Wednesday. He said her name incorrectly. John Kerry said a woman by the name of Elizabeth Bagley, B-A-G-L-Y, just wrote an article. She works in the Institute of War, who's fluent in Arabic, spent an enormous amount of time studying in opposition, studying Syria. She just published this the other day, very interesting article, which I commend to you. The general belief there is real moderate opposition that exists. Wall Street Journal attached clarification to O'Baggy's opinion piece, noting that she is also affiliated with a group called the Syrian Emergency Task Force, which subcontracts with the U.S. government to assist the Syrian opposition. In Afghanistan, Taliban militants attacked U.S. consulate in western city of Herat early the other day, setting off explosives and exchanging fire with security forces. 2 Afghan police and security guards and 7 attackers died in the assault. U.S. consulate said all of its personnel were safe. Egypt's military-backed government has extended a state of emergency for 2 months just before it was set to expire. The interim government imposed emergency law starting last month after launching a crackdown against supporters of ousted President Mohamed Morsi, and that has killed some 1,000 people. Extension came the same day an Egyptian court acquitted 10 police officers and 4 others in killing of protesters during the uprising against President Hosni Mubarak in 2011. And broadcaster Al Jazeera says it's taking legal action in international courts against Egypt's government for raiding its offices, jamming its signals, confiscating equipment, detaining reporters. Earlier this month, the Egyptian court ordered Al Jazeera, local affiliate, and other stations to stop broadcasting amid the campaign against outlets seen as sympathetic to the ousted President Mohamed Morsi. A judge in India has sentenced 4 men to death by hanging for the fatal gang rape of a woman in New Delhi bus that ignited mass anti-rape protests in December. The family of the victim, Jyoti Singh Pandey, were among those demanding the death penalty. The sentence must still be approved by India's High Court. Mass demonstrations continued in the 3rd night across Turkey following the death of a 22-year-old protester on Thursday. According to Turkish news reports, witnesses said Ahmet Atakan was hit in the head with a tear gas canister at an action to condemn earlier police violence and protest government construction projects. But officials say Atakan died after falling from a building. On Thursday, Amnesty International called on the United States and other countries to suspend shipments of tear gas and other police equipment to Turkey amid what they termed as abusive use of force by the authorities. In Washington, D.C., more than 100 women were arrested Thursday after blocking an intersection outside the U.S. Capitol building to demand comprehensive immigration reform, including a path to citizenship for millions of undocumented people. More than 20 undocumented women took part in an act of civil disobedience. The protesters came from across the country to call attention to the impact of current U.S. immigration policies on women and children. Pramila Jayapal, I think is her name, of the campaign We Belong Together, spoke at a rally before the women all joined hands and sat down in the street and said, "Each one of the 105 women who are here today understands how high the stakes are. We understand the passage of fair and humane immigration reform is not just a piece of legislation, but rather an ability for us to take care of our families, to keep our children safe and fed and in school rather than preparing them for what they will see if they come home and find that a parent has been deported." On our website, you can watch our interview. Well, that's what they say. Christina Zun had said that before she was arrested. Whatever that meant. California is poised to raise its minimum wage to $10 an hour by 2016, potentially giving the highest minimum wage in the country. The state legislature passed the bill Thursday and sent to Governor Jerry Brown, who had vowed to sign it. California's current minimum wage is $8 an hour. Washington's currently the highest state in a minimum wage of $9.19 an hour. California lawmakers also passed the Domestic Workers Bill of Rights, which would make California the first state in the country to give live-in workers the right to overtime pay if they work more than 9 hours a day or 45 hours per week. Governor Brown vetoed similar legislation last year. Washington, D.C. Mayor Vincent Gray has vetoed a bill to provide retail workers with a living wage following pressure from Walmart and other chains. The bill would have required large retailers to pay their employees at least $12.50 an hour. Walmart had threatened not to open 3 of its 6 stores planned for the area if the measure was passed. Mayor Gray called the bill a job killer, saying Target, Home Depot, and other retailers also objected. D.C. City Council could still override the mayor's veto. Walmart workers have launched a series of strikes recently to demand higher wages and better conditions. In Colorado, at least 3 people were dead and devastating floods followed the days of torrential rain. Officials warned early in the morning that the 30-foot surge of water bearing cars and other debris was headed for the Boulder area. Thousands of residents were told to evacuate, while some communities had left stranded without power. Massive wildfires in recent years have made some areas more susceptible to flooding. And in Arkansas, a special prosecutor has been ordered to investigate the fatal police shooting of a 107-year-old man last week in Pine Bluff. Police said they were called to Monroe Isidore's home after he brandished a gun. They said Isidore fired at them after they stormed inside and deployed gas. Florida's Attorney General Pam Bondi says she made a mistake when she delayed the execution of a death row prisoner so she could attend a fundraiser for her re-election campaign. Marshal Lee Gore was due to be executed Monday for 2 murders, but Governor Rick Scott postponed his killing at Bondi's request. The move drew criticism, particularly since Bondi is currently fighting challenges to Florida's so-called Timely Justice Act, which is aimed at speeding up executions, even though Florida has the highest rate of exonerations in the country for wrongfully convicted death row prisoners. In a statement, Bondi said she absolutely should not have requested that the date of the execution be moved. Gore's execution had previously been stayed twice following claims of mentally ill. And the latest potential sign of contamination from genetically modified crops, alfalfa plants in Washington state have tested positive for genetic modification, even though the farmer believed they were unmodified. Agriculture officials are testing alfalfa after it was rejected for export by a broker. In May, genetically modified wheat created by Monsanto was discovered in an Oregon farm after the farmer attempted to kill wheat with the Monsanto herbicide, but found some of the plants had survived. Testing showed the wheat was from an herbicide-resistant strain that was field tested before being withdrawn from the regulatory process after protests. The discovery prompted Japan and South Korea to temporarily halt purchases of some U.S. wheat. Officials in Canada have say a train that derailed and exploded this summer in Quebec was carrying mislabeled oil that was actually more hazardous than initially believed. 47 people died in a July derailment of Lac Mégantic. A recent report by an environmental group found high toxic material at the site, high levels of it, Group 3, when it actually belonged to more explosive Group 2. And Cubans marked the 15th anniversary of the arrest of the Cuban Five Thursday, displaying yellow ribbons and calling for the United States to release the men from prison. Cuban Five were arrested on September 12, 1998, later convicted of espionage. They say they are not spying on the United States, but trying to monitor violent right-wing Cuban exile groups responsible for attacks inside Cuba. 4 members of the Cuban Five remain behind bars, while the 5th, Rene Gonzalez, was released on parole in 2011. Adriana Perez, wife of Cuban Five member Gerardo Hernandez, spoke at the event in Havana and said, "Today is a movement of solidarity, a message to the people of the United States," so they asked their president and their government to return the Cuban Five with a signature that he can give to free them. Gerardo, my husband, is jailed on 2 life sentences. He's condemned to die in prison, so all this is left in humanitarian gesture, which is what we are asking the President of the United States and his people for. And they had, well, that's all I'm going to say about that. The philosopher, professor, and writer Marshall Berman has died at the age of 72. Berman died in a heart attack in New York City in his favorite diner, the Metro, on Wednesday. He wrote several books, including All That Is Solid Melts into the Air, The Experience of Modernity, and Adventures in Marxism. And the New York-based education scholar, professor, and author Jean Onion has died following a battle with cancer. She wrote several seminal works on the ways of schools reproduce inequality. She died on Saturday. And that's it for World News today. Now another thanks to one of our underwriters who supports your only visual video news media in Nevada County. That's right, it's us, GV. GVTV News.
Soundcheck Music Center, the rock and roll connection. We have guitars, amps, drum equipment, sound accessories, lessons, and repairs. We are located at 671 Maltman Drive, Grass Valley. 530-272-7236, open 7 days a week.
No one needs anyone, they don't even just pretend. Jonah's in America. I'm afraid of Americans. I'm afraid of the world. I'm afraid I can't help it. I'm afraid I can't. I'm afraid of Americans. I'm afraid of the world. I'm afraid I can't.
That's right, it's time for the police blotter, and pictures in the blotter not from these actual events, but used for visual aid only. Grass Valley Police Department. On Wednesday, 8:40 a.m., a caller from 2100 block of Nevada City Highway reported a man camping behind a business. At 10:11 a.m., a caller from 200 block of Gates Place reported a man fighting and refusing to leave, who then left the area. 2:07 p.m., a caller from 100 block of Neal Street reported a man who kept passing out with empty beer cans next to him. He was moving on. Looks like he didn't get very far. 1:08 p.m., a caller from 200 block of Dorsey Drive reported a caregiver was stealing from a dependent adult. At 1:35 p.m., a caller from Murphy and East Main Street reported ongoing problem with wrong-way drivers. At 2:34 p.m., a caller from Highway 49 and Brunswick Road reported a screaming woman trying to get out of a window of a vehicle and being held back. At 2:39 p.m., a caller from Memorial Park reported a man and woman possibly using drugs in a restroom. How could you tell? They were gone when officers arrived. At 2:48 p.m., a caller reported identity theft. 3:51 p.m., a caller from 100 block of Sierra College Drive reported a man called and said there was a pipe bomb inside a building. The building was evacuated. At 4:45 p.m., a woman from 200 block of Sutton Way reported her dog was attacked by a neighbor's pit bull. At 6:13 p.m., a caller from Highway 174 and Ray Street reported being mooned by a woman. 7:18 p.m., a woman from 800 block of Sutton Way reported a man was drunk in public with a large bottle of Popov vodka. He could not be located. At 7:48 p.m., a caller from Condon Park reported people setting off fireworks. No one was located. Nevada County Sheriff's Office on Wednesday, 9:26 a.m., caller from 21,000 block of Higgins Road reported a lock and seal on a trailer had been tampered with. 11:32 a.m., a caller from 10,000 block of Alta Sierra Drive reported someone possibly tried to steal a kayak rack off the top of a truck. At 11:58 a.m., a man from Lake Wildwood reported being punched in the arm and kicked in the leg yesterday. At 1:56 p.m., a caller from Courthouse reported an assault. Man was arrested on suspicion of battery. At 2:11 p.m., a caller from 13,000 block of Expanding Light Drive reported gas siphoning. And at 2:18 p.m., a caller from jail reported an assault involving 2 inmates. At 2:22 p.m., a caller from Eagle Circle reported aggressive dogs, noise, and possible out-of-compliance marijuana grow. At 3:19 p.m., a caller from 13,000 block of Somerset Drive reported an attempted residential burglary with damage to a door frame. At 3:22 p.m., a caller from 22,000 block of Jennifer Drive reported unauthorized use of a card. At 3:44 p.m., a man from 14,000 block of Talking Pines Road reported a woman was throwing items at his mother and then tried to run her over. At 4:29 p.m., a woman from 12,000 block of David Way reported 3 pit bulls attacked her and her dog. At 4:36 p.m., a woman from 15,000 block of Names Drive reported a man grabbed her by the leg and dragged her out of the house. 5:49 p.m., a caller reported a possible physical fight at 11,000 block of Ball Road. No one was located. And 6:47 p.m., caller from 13,000 block of Lower Colfax Road reported residential burglary with access through a window. Several items were missing. And 7:09 p.m., a caller from Tyler Foot Crossing and Oak Tree Roads reported 2 reckless motorcycles ran someone off the road. And 8:30 p.m., a caller from Dry Creek Lane and Wood Lake Road reported hearing 5 gunshots. It was quiet when deputies arrived. 9:33 p.m., a caller from 23,000 block of La Costa Court reported a man was choking a woman. A report was taken. And Thursday, 2:46 a.m., a caller from 23,000 block of Scotts Flat Road reported a large bear at a campsite. The bear was gone when deputies arrived. Nevada City Police Department on Wednesday, 8:25 a.m., a caller from North Pine Street reported a theft from a vehicle. And 2:21 p.m., a caller from Gold Flat Road reported ongoing theft problems. At 2:39 p.m., a man was crying, another man in the background yelling he was going to kill him because he owes him money, then says his legs are broken. The caller then started singing and said he needed money for his heroin addiction, then said not to mess with the Swedish Mafia before the line disconnected. And that's it for the blotter today. Now, thanks to one of our underwriters who supports your only visual video news media in Nevada County. That's right, it's us, GVTV News.
Soundcheck Music Center, the rock and roll connection. We have guitars, amps, drum equipment, sound accessories, lessons, and repairs. We are located at 671 Maltman Drive, Grass Valley. 530-272-7236, open 7 days a week.
In today's local news headlines, successor to closing NCTV proposed. In a story written by Christopher Rosacker of the Union, the plan for a new nonprofit to carry on public access television after the impending closure of the Nevada County Digital Media Center was frequently described by the use of the Phoenix metaphor at a Thursday meeting to discuss the latter's last days. Plan for the Nevada County TV Media Arts, or NCCTV, to pick up the Digital Media Center's mission followed its board's decision to shutter the station was announced Thursday by Keith Logan, a sustainability consultant, and Dan Holler, who recently resigned as the City of Grass Valley's administrator. It is possible, based on limited operating capital, to create and run a new station, Logan said at a Thursday meeting with the Media Center's board, which was a meeting to discuss the procedural dismantling of the organization, its assets, and legal obligations. About 30 people were crammed into the small boardroom, including me, at the Media Center in Nevada City Thursday, and it was the first time the station's producers had a chance to confront their board for their mid-August decision to close Nevada County Television, NCTV. First speaker called for the board's members' resignation. He wasn't the last one to do so on Thursday, but both outgoing Executive Director Lou Sitzer and Board President Karen Marinovich defended the board, saying that NCTV's operating model is no longer sustainable. It is possible, based on limited operating capital, to create and run a new station. Keith Logan, Sustainable Council consultant, said, although NCCTV is in the process of obtaining state nonprofit tax exemption certification, NCCTV was already outlined finances in its two proponents had said. Among its business plan, Logan and Holler outlined a new entity would take all 3 aspects of the PEG station on a $10,000 operating budget. NCCTV is designed to continue the PEG programming at separate entity from the former Digital Media Center, which is revising the operating plan, providing clients with PEG programming and broadcast within portion of the sprouting agency's business plan. It's possible to create a new entity without the baggage and legal liability of the current setup, Logan said. Already, NCCTV has eyed the meager 400 square foot location. That was the infrastructure that would continue to produce programming but not broadcast live. It would be a much smaller operation, he said, would function with the proposed entity's executive who would function as a proposed entity's executive director. While Logan and Holler's proposal garnered widespread support by attending producers in the NCTV board, time is not on everyone's side. It isn't talking about raising funds instead of closing the doors, one resident asked Patricia Smith. And we cannot ask people to put money into an operation that feel very little chance of a successful structure, is the response from Marinovich. Media Center's board voted Thursday to set an October 15th close date to end the programming, which would allow time to disperse equipment to Nevada County preferred nonprofits and vacate its leasing premises. However, the date was approved unanimously by the board with the caveat that should an estimated $10,000 in donations become available, they would be able to stall the shutter until November 1st to allow more time for Holler and Logan's proposed agency to finalize the arrangements. We can't request the funds, said Craig Porter, second in command of the Media Center board. If there are interested parties that want to contribute to donate as a board, we would have to accept that donation. Have to accept. It's too bad they didn't try to raise a little more money, though. Holler indicated that GVTV, which he proposed to advise voluntarily as co-founder, would likely have its location secured by the end of October. Getting the new agency's nonprofit public benefit corporation status approved by the state could take 60 to 90 days. He also added, "I'm totally on board. I don't think you have to think about it," I said at that proposal. And I said, it is a plan and it makes sense. And it does. I'm on board.